Hi, I'm Matt Dillahunty, president of the Atheist Community of Austin and host of the Atheist Experience TV show. And while I hoped to be doing this talk on the steps of the Capitol in Austin, instead I'm shooting it from my backyard where I'm kind of in a little bit of a quarantine. But as I noted in the introduction to this event earlier, we will not be stopped. Over the 15 years that I've hosted the Atheist Experience, I've had the opportunity to interact with many people from all around the world. I've heard from people who are theists and who wish to have conversations. Some of them only want to preach. Some of them seem incapable of having conversations, and some of them are genuinely interested in moving the conversation forward. I want to talk to those people today, the people who are potentially allies of the godless. In the years that I've done this show, in the years that I've participated in the atheist community, I've also had the opportunity to hear from many atheists who feel alone, who feel ostracized. I've dealt with couples who have changed their religious views, or one of the partners has changed their religious views, and they're dealing with the stress this has put on their relationship. I've dealt with couples who are dealing with this with respect to how they should raise their children. On a regular basis, we get telephone calls from people who, no longer having a religious belief, but once having such a belief, now have to deal with, how do I interact with my family members? Will they still love me? Will they toss me aside? There are a number of great organizations like Reaffirming from Religion that have been established, and individual communities like the Atheist Community of Austin, which are here as landing places for people who, after giving up religion or after having decided that they need to participate in a community of people who have no religion, needed places like that. I've spoken to children who've been thrown out of their homes, teenagers ostracized by their parents, had their bags and belongings tossed out into the front yard, where we had to find new homes for them to live in because the parents would not tolerate an atheist child. Through the course of all these conversations, it's become clear that while I live in an incredibly prosperous, privileged country where I don't have to suffer and I don't have to fear reprisal when I speak my mind, that we still have a long way to go. I do the show from Austin, Texas. I don't have any great fear that religious zealots are going to come storming into the building and, beat me up. Around the world, that's not the same. There are individuals who merely for posting a non-religious Facebook message or blog post legitimately fear for their lives. In my country, the fear is of being alone. The fear is of being viewed as someone unworthy of love, unworthy of family, unworthy of community. And that's why we in the atheist community will continue to build communities, continue to provide places for people to interact. The ostracizing that takes place doesn't happen with every religious identity equally. Not everyone fears what their family's going to say. But it's sufficient enough that it impacts whether or not an atheist is likely to get elected to office, whether or not secular views are taken seriously in legislation, despite the fact that in the United States, we have, in our Constitution, in the law, a secular system, perhaps the first potentially glorious secular government, where you are free to hold your religious views, you are free to practice your religious views, and the only imposition from the government on your religious actions is when they come in conflict with other people's rights. One of the biggest problems, though, is that the majority religions aren't in any way forced or expected to view things in that light by virtue of their might, their popularity, They just presume that the rest of the world needs to act the way they want the world to act. We have children who are told that they are broken, that they're born sinful, that they're destined to hell. I've heard from people in their 70s who, despite being an atheist for decades, still wake up from nightmares of a hell they were taught to believe in when they were just children. We produce a TV show where people can call in, have those conversations. Some of them go well, some of them don't go particularly well. I travel the country doing lectures and debates, debating apologists from every corner of the globe. Some of those conversations are productive, some of them aren't. But that's the academic portion of this. It's the people portion that my secular humanism drives me to address. The people who are ostracized, the people who are made to suffer mental anguish, physical anguish, and even the fear of death. You are not broken. You are not bad. You are not immoral. You are not inferior. You are none of those things merely because you are not convinced of one of the many shared cultural delusions that our societies prop up as the pinnacles of virtue. Their claim that they have some divine right and superly imposed morality. Any of us who don't share a God as a foundation are somehow repugnant. Somehow God has given us over to a reprobate mind. We're broken. We are inferior. We are immoral. It doesn't matter what we do. As the Psalm said, the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. They can do no good thing. Ancient holy texts have mistreated, misrepresented, and maligned non-believers from the beginning. And while it may not feel like it, religious individuals are the true first-tier victims of religion. The oppression that they impose is a manifestation of their fears and their insecurities. Their divisive us and them actions deserve our unified opposition in support of equality. And they, on a personal level, deserve our pity and compassion. This isn't a call for meekness. I'm not the meek atheist, and anyone who's seen the show can attest to that. You are correct to be angry at what has been done on behalf of religious identity. You should argue. You should engage. You should be passionate and be strong and unflinching in your support of equality and an end to religious privilege and religious oppression. That righteous anger, tempered with compassion, is the key to helping them out of the dark mire, and then their hands, instead of being folded in useless prayer, formed into a fist, or fashioning the weapons and words used to oppress the next generation of non-believers, can be the hands that help us, help others, live in a better world tomorrow. We've already started. We've built communities. We've produced content. We have engaged. We have worked to elect representatives that will represent all of us fairly. I would never advocate legislation to forcefully end religion, but legislation that ends religious oppression and religious privilege is a must. I would never engage with someone and desperately try to convince them that their religion is wrong unless they were willing to have the conversation. On our show, we make outgoing calls. We don't make outgoing calls. We take calls as they come in. But we need atheists internationally to stand up for equality, to advocate for atheist normalcy so that people know that their next door neighbor, who they like, is a non-believer and isn't a monster. And so that our religious friends, relatives, and neighbors can be freed of the dogma and doctrines that have kept the world shackled for far too long. Please, atheists around the world, be out and be outspoken. And religious individuals, who are interested in equality and fairness and discussion, join with us in making sure that while everyone is free to practice their beliefs to the extent that they don't interfere with other people's lives, we are all working towards a truly better tomorrow where I never have to have another conversation with a 15-year-old kicked out of his home and community desperate to find a new place for that kid to live just because his parents are the victims of religious dogma and are spreading that bigotry on. Thank you.